A rabbit is caught in an open field at dusk. A hawk's shadow crosses the grass, and the rabbit does not run. It locks rigid, heart-hammering, utterly still. You have done the exact same thing in a meeting, in a doorway, in a moment you still replay as cowardice. Here is the thing about fear. Most of us were taught the wrong map. We were taught that danger gives you two clean options, fight or flight. Punch back or run away. So when your body does neither, when your mouth shuts, your muscles lock, and your mind goes strangely blank, it feels like you failed to choose. But the biology is not built like a motivational poster. Kozlowska, Walker, McLean, and Carrive, 2015 Harvard Review of Psychiatry, described the Defense Cascade as an ordered sequence of survival states: arousal, fight or flight, freeze, tonic, immobility, and then collapsed or quiescent shutdown. Each step appears when the step above it stops looking possible. Fanselow, 1994, Psychonomic Bulletin and Review, called this the predatory imminence continuum, meaning the response is shaped by how close, immediate, and inescapable the threat feels. Not by your character, not by whether you had the right speech prepared. Think about the rabbit again. If the hawk is far away, scanning may help. If the hawk is close, running may help. If the hawk is already over the body, stillness may be the only remaining calculation. Human beings carry the same old machinery under the expensive surface of language and identity. In conflict, assault, public humiliation, medical panic, or a room where leaving would make things worse, your nervous system is not holding a meeting. It is descending a ladder. Fight or flight is only the middle rung. Below it are states your willpower does not get to vote on. And if you have spent years asking why you did not do something, the answer may be simpler and sadder than you were told. Your body thought doing nothing was the last available way to survive. But to understand why stillness can feel so active inside, we have to look at the break. And this is where the image gets strange. Freeze is not the body being lazy. It is not low effort. In many cases, it is the body hitting the brake while the engine is still screaming. Porges, 2007, Biological Psychology, described a layered autonomic system in which social connection can support regulation. But older defensive pathways can pull the body toward immobilization when danger feels overwhelming and inescapable. That is why freeze can feel like a contradiction. Outside, you look passive. Inside, you may be flooded. Roelofs, 2017, Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B, called this freeze for action. A braked state of attentive immobility where the body stills, heart rate can drop, and the brain scans intensely for the next possible move. The stillness is not emptiness. It is compression. A body can become quiet because it has given up, but it can also become quiet because any motion now feels too expensive, too visible, too dangerous. This matters because people often judge freeze from the outside. They see silence and assume consent. They see limpness and assume surrender. They see a person going blank and assume nothing important is happening. But the nervous system may be running a narrow, ancient calculation. Do not provoke, do not signal, do not make the predator tighten its grip. In that sense, freeze is not the system crashing. It is the system pulling a different lever, one you do not have a hand on. The tragedy is that later, when the threat is gone. The person returns to language and finds the world waiting with moral vocabulary. Weak, passive, complicit, cowardly. And that is where the injury becomes cultural as well as biological. And this is where it gets worse. We have built a whole language of self-command around moments when command may be the least available thing in the room. Just set a boundary. Just walk away. Just say no. Sometimes those sentences are useful before danger arrives. But during the freeze itself, they can become a second accusation. Ledoux, 1996, The Emotional Brain, showed that fear does not wait politely for conscious interpretation. Fast subcortical routes can activate defensive responses before the cortex has assembled a story. So the question, why did I not decide differently, often assumes the wrong narrator. The part of you that writes reasons may not have been the part in control. This is not abstract. Bovin, Jaeger-Hyman, Gold, Marks, and Sloan, 2008, Journal of Traumatic Stress, found that tonic immobility during sexual assault was tied to paratraumatic fear, perceived inescapability, and later PTSD symptoms. Volchan, Souza, Franklin, and colleagues, 2011, Biological Psychology, reported biological evidence of tonic immobility in human victims of traumatic stress. In other words, the frozen body is not rare, theatrical, or chosen. It is common enough to study, measurable enough to document, and painful enough to predict later suffering. Yet survivors are routinely asked why they let it happen, as if a person in tonic immobility is weighing options like someone choosing a restaurant. The self-help version of the world wants every wound to become a lesson in assertiveness, because that keeps the story clean. If the problem was your skill, then the product can be a new skill. But a brainstem reflex is not impressed by slogans. A culture that sells composure as a lifestyle quietly tells the frozen that they simply did not try hard enough. And once shame attaches itself to the reflex, the body learns to fear its own defenses. Here is the part people rarely describe cleanly. Freeze is not always a dramatic statue moment. Sometimes it is fog. Sometimes it is the room getting far away. Sometimes time slows, your voice disappears, and you watch yourself from somewhere behind your own eyes. Schauer and Elbert, 2010, Zeitschrift für Psychologie / Journal of Psychology, described dissociation after traumatic stress along a freeze-to-faint continuum, where immobility, depersonalization, analgesia, and collapse can emerge as later defenses in the same cascade. Kozlowska, Walker, McLean, and Carrive, 2015, Harvard Review of Psychiatry, also placed tonic immobility and collapsed states below fight or flight in the Defense Cascade, which matters because these later states are often remembered as blankness rather than action. That is unsettling, but it is also relieving. It means the blankness had a function. The body narrowed sensation, slowed the scene, or separated awareness because full contact with the moment may have been too much to metabolize. Roelofs, 2017, Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B, described freezing as an organized defensive state, not simply the absence of behavior. A person can leave the room, the relationship, the assault, the childhood house, and still carry a nervous system braced for an event that is no longer happening. That is why you may freeze during ordinary conflict years later. A partner changes tone. A manager asks a question. Someone blocks the doorway. Your adult life says this is manageable. Your body says this has happened before. And because the freeze response is quiet, it can be mistaken for personality. I am avoidant. I am weak. I am bad under pressure. Maybe. But maybe the flat, foggy, cannot move feeling is not who you are. Maybe it is an unfinished survival reflex still running in the background, waiting for proof that the danger is finally over. Which means the way out cannot just be an argument with yourself. Okay. So what do you actually do with a reflex you cannot outthink? The first move is humility. You do not shame a spinal reflex into becoming philosophical. You work from the body upward. Levine, 1997, Waking the Tiger, argued that trauma recovery often involves completing thwarted defensive energy through the body rather than trying to reason it away. That does not mean every person needs the same method. It means the direction matters. Bottom up before top down. If freeze is a survival state, the body has to receive evidence that survival is no longer at stake. Porges' 2007 biological psychology would call these cues of safety. A steady voice, a non-threatening face, orientation to the room, a slower exhale, enough distance to choose movement. Force often backfires because force resembles danger. Lara and Jeverts, 2014, Frontiers in Psychology, reviewed heart rate variability biofeedback and showed how slow breathing practices can strengthen regulation by working with the body's rhythm rather than against it. That is not a magic cure. It is threshold training. Over time, the system may need more threat before it drops into freeze, and less time before it comes back. For some people, the first sign of recovery is not confidence. It is one finger moving, one breath lengthening, 1 second of orientation returning before the old shutdown completes its descent. Then there is the cognitive piece, but it comes after naming the biology. When tonic immobility is understood as a reflex, the self-blame loop loses its premise. The question changes from, why was I so weak, to, what did my body believe was impossible? That question is kinder, but it is also more precise. You do not beat the freeze by being braver. You make your body believe sooner that the danger is gone. The freeze was never the moment you failed. It was the moment your oldest survival system decided it could keep you alive better than your conscious self could. Kozlowska, Walker, McLean, and Carrive, 2015 Harvard Review of Psychiatry, gave that descent a clinical map, and Roelofs, 2017 Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B, showed that stillness can be organized, alert, and purposeful. Knowing that does not make you fragile. It ends a war you were fighting against your own brainstem. The next time you replay the moment and call it cowardice, try a more honest sentence. My body chose the oldest option it had. If this helped you name something you have been blaming yourself for, send it to someone who still thinks freezing means weakness. And I will see you in the next one.